This is episode 107 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Devon Kennard. You may know him from the NFL, but this guy has way more going on. He always saw himself as an athlete, investor, and author. He does have a new book out now called It All Adds Up, Designing Your Game Plan for Financial Success. And Devon has gone quickly into real estate from the time he started NFL up to at least 20 single family, smaller multifamily properties, as well as 40 plus syndication investments. And last thing, he now has a private lending company, 42 Solutions. We're going to talk about it all. Devon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad we're able to make this happen. And it was great being on the panel with you at Bigger Pockets, man.
Yeah, man. I think it was exciting to kind of like meet in person because a lot of these times I haven't met somebody before, but we got in, we were on the panel at Bigger Pockets and that went well. What did you think of that whole event? Like, that was the first time I was actually at BPCon and we were there, together on stage and our room was packed. It was like overflowing with people in the back. I was like, people really want to learn.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the whole experience. It was my first time at BPCon and there's a ton of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge, but if you're really taking advantage, I think it's the networking opportunities and some of the private conversations is what I took most from it because it really kind of broadens your perspective of like, wow, okay, I could do this, I could go this direction. So, I kind of left motivated and the timing was perfect because it's kind of the last quarter of the year, getting ready for 2024. And it really shifted some of my goals for next year and beyond.
Yeah. And I mean, I can tell just from watching, obviously we're friends, but I watch on social media and then like, you get through BPCon and then like, hey, wait, there's you and James Kennard. Like you guys are doing stuff. Like you can see that just building the relationships immediately turns into more advantageous relationships and business possibilities, from that. And I think that's important for everybody to learn. Especially what you said, which is really, we called LobbyCon, there's BPCon and there's people talking and then everyone's in the lobby, networking the whole time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so going back, I'm sure you were playing sports, obviously growing up because you ended up in the NFL, but when you were younger, did you think about real estate at all?
As a young kid growing up, no, not at all. I knew I wanted to be successful primarily through football, but I had a vision for what I wanted my life to look like. And football was the vehicle that I always envisioned getting me there. But as I got older, I started to get into college and I was facing adversity in football that made it look like it wasn't going to be possible. And that made me ask the question, do I want to be successful because I'm an NFL player one day? Or do I want to be successful, period? And when, my career is in jeopardy football wise, and it's like, all right, well, I still want this lifestyle that I always envisioned for myself. So how am I going to get it without football? And that question is what saved my financial life, I think, because it completely changed my perspective and really kind of lit a fire in me to figure what that was, what I was going to do. And, real estate really started to draw on me. And, that's where I took off with it from there.
So what was it that you think that drove you? Was it just what you knew you wanted to be as successful and only part of that had to be NFL for you?
Yeah. I would say it kind of goes back to my youth in that my dad played in the NFL as well. And seeing his career in life, I was young when he played. He retired when I was 5 years old. So I got to see his life a lot after the NFL. And that put a lot in perspective for me to where it's like, wow, there's so much life after football. And having that perspective, really helped me because it's like, all right, even if everything goes perfect, I'm going to have so much life on the other end of this. Let me figure this out. But, the other thing is the idea that I wanted to have a perspective of not just choosing to be good at one thing, but trying to all the roles and all the different roles I play in my life, trying to excel at them, whether that's being a student, being a son, now a husband, a father, all of these different things. And I found when, you don't just focus on one thing and you really put your best foot forward in all the different priorities you have, they affect each other. The better father I am, it makes me a better football player. It makes me a better investor and so on. So having that perspective has helped me a lot. And it's reason why, I got good grades in school. I'm one of the few athletes who graduated with his undergrad and master's degree before he got drafted. And it's not because I'm outrageously smarter than the next guy, but I had that perspective of I got to be here anyways. Let me put my best foot forward.
When you first decided real estate was going to be a vehicle to something else later, how did you start? You're already, successful in football, but where do you start as someone who's like, hey, now I'm a brand new investor? How'd you get started?
As you know, like I believe real estate's all about relationships and knowledge and then taking action. So I didn't know that at the time when I started, but I was building relationships. And when I was in college, I even before I knew I wanted to get into real estate, I was good at making sure I took care of the classroom and trying to network and meet as many people as I could, because I
Yeah.
understood the idea that I was a college player and then I was an NFL player. No one was going to be as interested in me as they are when I was in those moments. I see it already. I just retired and I still get a lot of love, but it ain't the same. The love ain't the same as, oh, I'm a current player and I just had a sack on Tom Brady and now
Right.
I'm retired and I'm talking about, oh, I used to play. Like, people respect it, but it's not the same level of love. So I recognized that while I was even in college, and I leveraged the relationships. And I've told this story many times, but one of my mentors, I met him my redshirt senior year in college, and I went into his office, and he's a real estate investor, but started off as a police officer. And dude had a t-shirt on, some jeans. He was standing up. He had one of those desks that can move up or down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could tell he ran the show. And like I came in there with the suit and tie buttoned up, like trying to impress him.
Yeah.
And I just remember leaving like, man, I want to be the guy who can come to the office like that. And hearing his story about like he was a police officer, house hacks, bought one property, turned it to two, so on, so on. And I'm like, if he did that off a police officer salary, not trying to pocket
Right.
watch, but we can all estimate what a police officer gets paid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if he's able to build that, then what can I do if I play in the NFL, or even if I don't? Like, I can figure out how to make that much. So,
Yeah.
that's where the spark went off. And I started diving into books, podcasts, learning. After my rookie season, I made my first investment.
Yeah. And what was the first investment and where was it?
Beech Grove, Indiana,
Oh, all right.
3-bed, 2-bath, single family turnkey property from a turnkey provider, which is essentially a flipper who's flipping at scale and selling
Yeah.
stabilized assets. Bought it for $87,000 with a partner. I put 12K, he put 12K. I did the
Yeah.
loan in my name, and it was a great property. It cash flowed great for us, pocketed a few $100s a month each, for many years. And then we couldn't scale because that same turnkey provider ghosted me. So he ghosted me,
That's common.
which I realized, all right, I got to make sure I can scale in markets that I want to invest, because this
Yeah.
one property was nice, but I got a property in Beech Grove and I'm probably not buying anymore. So we ended up
Right. Right.
selling. I made a great return. I think I netted 26. So we each netted 26. So
Nice.
got our money back plus 14K, not including cash flow along the way. So it turned out to be a great deal for us. But that kind of sparked it, that whole process. And I kept buying. I started getting into real estate syndications, and every year I was like, I got to keep stacking up.
Yeah. I think it's important that you go in, it worked, like your first investment worked, but you also learned something about whatever turnkey company. And that's very common across the board with turnkey. After that first turnkey, did you still do turnkey, just different operators and figuring out different markets where you could get more in the same area?
Yeah, so I definitely stayed with turnkey, and I stayed in the Midwest ish. I started buying in Ohio and then Kansas City, and for all the same reason, I was finding 3-bed, 2 baths in good neighborhoods for
Yeah.
100K or less that stabilized. So some would argue and like shake their head, you were buying turnkey, but it's like stabilized. I was getting 8 to 10% return, cash on
Right.
cash, buying fully cash. And there are markets that were appreciating, not necessarily outstanding, but appreciating okay. But
Steady. Yeah.
cash flow was great. So it made sense to me. And with the amount of time I had, because obviously my main thing was football, I felt like the turnkey route was the way to go, because growing up, I knew nothing about putting hammer to nail and figuring out how to deal with any of that. And I didn't have the bandwidth. I consider myself a passive investor, especially while I was playing. So I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth to learn the nicks and crannies of this. So let me buy stabilized assets.